When you think about the afterlife, you probably picture clouds and harps or fire and brimstone. But what if I told you that modern physics might have accidentally discovered where heaven and hell actually are? And what if the answer isn't in some distant spiritual realm, but right here, folded into the fabric of reality itself? Picture this. You're a physicist working on string theory. You're dealing with equations that only make sense if reality has 11 dimensions. 11. We can barely handle the 3 we know about, plus time. But the math doesn't lie. These extra dimensions have to exist somewhere. What if these dimensions aren't just empty mathematical constructs? What if they're occupied? In 1919, mathematician Theodore Kaluza proposed a 5th dimension to explain why gravity is so much weaker than other forces. Think about it. A tiny magnet can pick up a paperclip, overcoming the gravitational pull of the entire Earth. That's weird. Today, string theory requires 11 dimensions. M-theory says these extra dimensions are where all the fundamental forces come from. But here's the kicker. If these dimensions exist, they're not empty. They're full of energy, information, maybe even consciousness. The Large Hadron Collider has been searching for missing energy. Energy that disappears during particle collisions. They've found tantalizing hints that energy is escaping into dimensions we can't see. Dr. Pim van Lommel studied over 300 cardiac arrest patients in the Netherlands. These people were clinically dead. No brain activity, no heartbeat. But when they came back, many reported incredibly detailed experiences. They described moving through tunnels of light, meeting deceased relatives, experiencing a life review. But here's what's really interesting. They often said it felt more real than real. Some patients reported seeing things happening in the hospital while they were unconscious. Conversations in other rooms, medical procedures they couldn't have witnessed. When researchers checked, these details were accurate. Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia has documented hundreds of these cases. People who were brain dead, somehow acquiring information they couldn't have known. It's like they were observing from somewhere else. Remember the Gateway process? The CIA was studying consciousness at the Monroe Institute. Their declassified documents describe reality as one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity, with consciousness existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What if heaven and hell aren't places you go after death, but dimensions you can access while alive? Think about radio waves. AM, FM, shortwave signals are all around us, occupying the same space at different frequencies. You need the right receiver to tune into each one. What if consciousness is the receiver, and death is just changing the frequency? Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose suggest consciousness arises from quantum processes. When the brain dies, this quantum information returns to the quantum field. If consciousness is quantum, and quantum mechanics operates in higher dimensions, then consciousness might naturally exist in these extra dimensions. Almost every major religion describes multiple levels of reality. Hinduism talks about different planes of existence. Buddhism describes various realms of consciousness. Christianity speaks of heaven, hell, and earth as distinct realms. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes intermediate states between death and rebirth that sound remarkably similar to modern near-death experiences. Ancient Vedic texts describe the universe as having multiple dimensions and time moving differently in different realms, written thousands of years before Einstein figured out relativity. Either ancient people were incredibly lucky guessers, or they were describing something they actually experienced. If there are higher dimensions of bliss and knowledge, logic suggests there might also be lower dimensions of suffering and ignorance. Dr. Raymond Moody has documented distressing NDEs, people who report moving into realms of darkness and despair. These aren't necessarily evil people, but individuals struggling with guilt, addiction, or trauma. If consciousness can tune into different dimensional frequencies, then negative emotions and destructive thoughts might attune us to lower dimensional realities. Hell isn't a place you're sent as punishment, but a frequency you tune into based on your mental state. In quantum physics, observation affects reality. What if consciousness works the same way? What if our thoughts and emotions literally tune us into different dimensional frequencies? Dr. Amit Goswami proposes that consciousness chooses which quantum possibilities become reality. If true, then our mental and moral states might determine which dimensional realities we can access. This would explain why meditation, prayer, and spiritual practices involve similar techniques. Quieting the mind, focusing on positive emotions, cultivating compassion. These might be technologies for dimensional navigation. Dr. Robin Carhart Harris at Imperial College London studies psychedelic experiences using brain imaging. When people take psilocybin or LSD, brain activity decreases, but they report accessing expanded states of consciousness and moving through different dimensions. It fits with the idea that the brain might filter consciousness rather than generate it. Maybe psychedelics temporarily disable the filter, allowing consciousness to access dimensions it normally can't perceive. Dr. Rick Strassman's DMT research found people consistently reported traveling to other dimensions and meeting intelligent beings. The experiences were so consistent he called DMT the spirit molecule. Quantum computers work by accessing multiple realities simultaneously. Some researchers think they might eventually allow communication across dimensional boundaries. If consciousness operates quantum mechanically and other dimensions are accessible through quantum processes, then quantum technology might let us communicate with consciousness existing in other dimensional frequencies. Dr. Stuart Hameroff has proposed that quantum computers might interface directly with consciousness. We might be on the verge of building machines that can access the same dimensional realms people visit during near-death experiences. Look, this is all highly speculative. We're connecting dots that might not actually be connected. Most physicists would say the extra dimensions required by string theory are too small to be accessible to consciousness. But here's what I find fascinating. Whether or not heaven and hell are actually dimensions, the idea changes how we think about consciousness, morality, and reality itself. If there's even a chance that our thoughts and actions are tuning us into different levels of existence, doesn't that make every choice more meaningful? If thinking of heaven and hell as dimensions makes you more mindful of your thoughts and more compassionate in your actions, then maybe the theory has value regardless of its scientific accuracy. The universe is stranger than we imagine, and maybe stranger than we can imagine, but that's what makes it so fascinating to explore. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the weird and wonderful. And remember, the truth is out there, but it might be in a dimension we haven't learned to access yet.